Leviticus 16, 7 through 10, we get some instructions about a specific appointed time, Moedim, and this passage says, "He shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for the scapegoat." Is this word that's used here? This is probably like the New American Standard or the New King James Version that would say scapegoat. "And Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement upon it and to let it go as the scapegoat into the wilderness." I feel like it might be something different in the Hebrew I've seen before. And there's some other English translations that might word it differently as well there. In the Masoretic Hebrew, to Azazel, it says, is the Hebrew word there. And then we have all these English translations, just to go through a few of them: the New Living Translation, English Standard Version, Holman Christian Standard Bible, American Standard Version, New American Bible, down all the way through. You got the Aramaic Peshitta, the Lamsa, the Aramaic Bible in plain English, some contemporary English, English Revised, JPS Tanakh. They all use the word Azazel as if it is a proper noun, capitalized A instead of the word scapegoat. And we even have certain translations, it'll say the lot to the wilderness of Azazel, the lot for Azazel. I think it's interesting when it says goat gets sent to Azazel, like in the wilderness, like it's sent off to this other being that's mentioned here in quick passing, really.
Yeah, I think the scapegoat is like the idea of the Azazel means scapegoat. So instead of using the word Azazel, they just use the meaning of it.
Yeah.
And then translations run with that. That's all I'm
Right.
I don't know what it's called in a literary technique, but that's what they did.
It depends on the context of the statement.
Right.
But there is the case that Hebrew words are actual names for entities and beings in Scripture.
Yeah, I've said this before, just like Adam was made from the dirt, and Adamah in Hebrew, which is Adam with an A on the end, means red dirt.
Nice.
So, it's the same. There's a lot of Hebrew words that are very on the nose as far as like what they are. What Eve means mother of all living. Like there's names that mean stuff. Seth means appointed.
Mm-hmm.
And in that language, when you would say, oh, I have a doctor's appointment, you would have said, I have a Dr. Seth. Obviously, I'm mixing English and ancient Hebrew. So the point is, like just like Yahweh says in Isaiah, I'll show the nations my salvation. Well, guess what? That's going to be Yeshua. So it's kind of on the nose. He's going to show the nations his Yeshua, his son, that they all come and bow down to. So
sure.
This is in the same regard. This is completely synonymous with all ancient Hebrew style, which is, and we see the reason that Azazel is the type of scapegoat in other verses we'll probably get to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this Hebrew word Azazel is used 4 times in this way in the modern Protestant 66 books of the canon. Leviticus 16:8, as we have here on screen, it's actually twice in Leviticus 16:10, and then again a 4th time in Leviticus 16:26. I think we got verse 10 on the next slide.
Oh, so Leviticus 16:10 says that, but the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement over it, and that it may be sent away into the wilderness to Azazel.
To Azazel. So this is the ESV English Standard Version, happens to word it much differently than the other English translations that predominantly will say scapegoat instead. But into the wilderness to Azazel, I don't think that there's any ambiguity with that translation, the way it's phrased, that it's sent off to somebody. They even capitalize the A.
It's not as if Satan has literally an intricate part of the Day of Atonement as far as receiving something or causing atonement to be made corporately for Israel because he receives the goat. Like, we don't think that he's literally just waiting outside the camp to get this goat. You know what I mean? But to me, it seems like it's all a symbolism because of what we're going to read in a minute is where this name came from and why it means scapegoat and how sin is attributed to this term Azazel. And in this ritual, the symbolic ritual of taking the goat that is left alive and sending out to the wilderness to Azazel makes perfect sense once you see the back history.
Right, because up until this point, especially in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers, we don't see this Azazel character being introduced anywhere in the modern American Protestant 66 books. But
you start to ask, well, why are these translations translating it as a proper noun? Well, like I was saying, like in the Hebrew, sometimes a word can also be someone's name. The reason they were given that name is because it's synonymous with the action of that word or the definition of that word.
Exactly.
So just like Eliezer means helped by God, and you see Abraham's Eliezer was helped by God,
Yeah.
being sold to Abraham and having his life spared, and being a servant of Abraham.
I heard
Same thing
something.
with
I heard
Lazarus.
something interesting recently. I was just about to say
Yeah,
Lazarus is Eliezer in a
yeah,
Greek transliteration, and so helped by God is appropriate for him too, wasn't it?
that's right. Right on the nose, as far as what the name means.
Guys, to set up this next slide, where would the Hebrews at this time have heard of the name Azazel, and where would the idea of ascribing sin to Azazel have come from? Obviously, no, this was Yahweh speaking these words to Moses in Leviticus, but is it possible that he introduced these concepts in scripture before the time of Leviticus? We would suggest that he did, and we find it in the book of First Enoch. Not
Yes, we
Second
do.
Enoch, not Third Enoch. We don't agree with those texts that don't pass the test of scripture. They don't even agree with First Enoch.
That's right.
But
That's right.
First Enoch does say this. It says in chapter 10, verse 8, and the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. To him ascribe all sin. To who? Azazel.
Azazel. Yeah.
Azazel. We'll probably say it both ways throughout the
Yeah.
episode. The father through the prophet Enoch, the seventh from Adam, Enoch, that Jude called a prophet of God. Enoch documents a history that we don't get in the modern Protestant canon of 66 books. So just to recap, though, what we shared in prior episodes, in the days of Jared, who was sixth from Adam, 200 angels were sent by Yahweh to instruct the children of men that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. However, these 200 rebelled and went astray from what they were commanded to do, and Azazel was one of them. Nonetheless, we got First Enoch 8, 1 through 2. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids. Antimony is like makeup, which is why it's right next to beautifying eyelids, right? And all kinds of costly stones and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Notice it doesn't say that Azazel committed fornication. It says that the ones that he led astray did.
That's right.
And that would, that's one of the results of women using antimony and beautifying the eyelids in a way that is used to provoke that kind of behavior, right? Because if we think about it, Sean, like swords, knives, shields, breastplates, like Yahweh is a God that told his men to go to war to protect what's right and to do what's right, right? So they use breastplates and swords, and even Yeshua said to get yourself a sword, right? So these things in themselves are not inherently evil. The way that he taught them to be used was so that men would sin with this knowledge. It's not that the knowledge itself was inherently evil. Would you agree with that?
Yes, right. It even says this later in the book of Enoch, how they had teach the secrets of heaven to men, that men were striving to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But that's literally why they were sent, was to help mankind govern himself in a lawful way. But they abused all that.
Right.
So this is why I always try to remind people that the angels of God are their own classes of priests from heaven. Because a priest is someone that's supposed to be responsible to help men adjudicate the law and walk out the law, not only to learn the law, but to walk it out in application with righteous judgment. And that is a role of a priest. And that's what angels were sent literally to do in the days of Jared before the flood, to help mankind. But they went astray from that mission and abused all their knowledge. Now think about this, though, because I'm glad you brought this point up. Azazel comes down with other angels. There was approximately 200 of them total.
Yeah.
And not only are they teaching mankind stuff to manipulate them and cause them to sin, both men and women, but the angels themselves start sinning. Azazel, well, like we're going to find out, he's given a different judgment. So it's always been my suspicion that he is using this passage here, the things described here, as far as the women, to equally entice his fellow brethren, his fellow angelic brethren, to make their own mistakes. So, because think about it, like, I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is if he's trying to gain power even over his fellow brethren, then the easiest way to do that is to corrupt them.
Yeah. Agreed.